Hi, my name is Enda Murray and I'm the director of the Irish Film Festival. I'm delighted to be joined tonight by Margo Harkin, the director, and Martha O'Neill, the producer of the documentary Stolen. Margo and Martha, tá fáilte roimh. You're very welcome.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
It's lovely to be here.
Martha, could I start with you? Could you tell me how the documentary Stolen came about for you? How did you get involved in the project?
Well, Margo had been working on it for a number of years before I came on board, before COVID started. And she was in contact with Catherine Corliss, who's the local historian who kind of broke the story of the babies in Tuam. And then COVID came along and the project stalled. And after COVID, a mutual friend of ours, Lelia Doolan, rang me and asked me, would I produce Margot's film on the mother and baby homes? And I just immediately said yes. I hadn't even spoken to Margot at that point to see would we even get on. But I just the subject matter just really attracted me, and I wanted to be involved. So that's how I came on the project.
Brilliant. Margo, it's a great honour to feature you in the festival. I've been a fan of your filmmaking for many years. Just to give the audience a bit of context, could just tell us about your own connection with filmmaking in Ireland and particular in Derry, and the founding of the workshop. The Derry Film and Video Workshop, just to kind of give us a bit of context, a bit of background on your journey with filmmaking.
Yeah, Channel 4 started in 1982, and at that time, Channel 4 was the only broadcaster that was going to take all its work from independent producers. That hadn't happened before. Before it was the broadcasters were all, they'd in-house BBC and in-house ITV, although they did take a level of independent production. But all of Channel 4's work was to come from independent producers, and they had to grow a new seedbed of talent. So myself and two other women, Anne Crowley and Tricia Ziff, set up a workshop in Derry under the Channel 4 franchise workshop agreement. And we argued that we had been the subject of so many other foreign news agents and filmmakers coming to Northern Ireland to make stories about us, and we had a right to an Indigenous representation of our lives. So that's really how it started. We didn't have a clue, really. I had worked with Field Day Theatre Company before that, but once we got together, we weren't short of ideas, and that was the main thing that we had. We wanted to increase the representation of women, both behind and in front of the camera and in technical grades. And so the three founding members were women, and that was in, I think we started in 1984, so that was the start of it.
Great. And tell us about the genesis of this project. Martha mentioned you'd been working on it for a while.
Yeah, well, as soon as Catherine Sapone, who was the Minister for Equality and Child and Youth Affairs and other departments as well, as soon as she announced in the Dáil that significant numbers of human remains had been found in a septic tank area. It wasn't literally a septic sludge tank, but in an area where there was a set of sewage chambers. And she announced that, as soon as she announced that, I thought, well, wow, Catherine Corliss has been proved correct. She was the person who brought this to public attention and who lobbied with government about it. And I went down to see Catherine on the 17th of March, 2017. I mean, the story had been rumbling for some time, but I went down to see her, and I always remember I brought her a little box of shamrocks, which was just the right thing to do. As it turned out, she didn't like cut flowers, and she was a vegetarian as well, and I brought her cheese and bread. Everything worked out, by the way. And we discussed it, and I was still shaping the idea in my head at that stage. I didn't really quite know what I wanted to do, except that it would be over a long term, possibly years, and that I would I wanted to make a feature documentary rather than your standard TV documentary. And she agreed to be involved, but I think the idea changed quite a bit, during the process, because, as Martha said, COVID came along. I began to think it was never going to get made because I had raised most of the money really at that stage, but contracts hadn't been signed and some figures weren't ironed out. But so I needed the help because I moved closed down my office in the city centre and moved to my home, and I just needed help. And so I was very grateful when Martha stepped in to work on the project with us. They took over a lot of that kind of work that I was really struggling with, or just didn't have enough time to deal with, really, you know. So
Yeah,
so that's where it
very
started.
good.
Yeah, yeah.
Martha, I was going to ask about the challenges of producing a documentary like Stolen. There's so many contributors and aspects to the story, and some of the contributors are professional people who are used to being in the public eye, and some of the interviewees had never even told their story to anyone else, let alone stood in front of a camera. What were the challenges of producing a story like this?
It we did a lot of prep before we went out and talked to anybody. Like, we talked in the office about the balance of professional contributors and survivors and the artists that were involved. So we had done a lot of prep, and then we went and met the contributors with them beforehand, spent some time with them. Um, and, you know, a lot of them weren't used to cameras around the place. Some of them had a little bit of experience. Um, so we went and met them and prepped, and then we shot and spent quite a lot of time with them shooting, especially with the survivors, because it takes time for them to tell their stories in a narrative fashion. And the professional contributors, they were easier to deal with, because you just made a date and put up the camera and talked to them, and they were used to kind of contributing more in sound bites, if you like. Um, so it wasn't it was a challenge of time rather than a challenge of organization, if you like.
Mm. And Margo, I was going to ask you, how did you find the balance in the film between the personal stories of the survivors and then the wider kind of social analysis and political analysis? Because I think that was something that was present in the film too. How did you find that balance?
Well, it was very important from the start. I mean, in terms of the interviewees, I selected, we had lists, but I selected a variety of cases that tried to reflect the complexity of the situation. I mean, you're only scraping the surface of this, because there were so many cases of people involved and so many different types of story, but I tried to pick a representative sample. But right from the very start, long before I met Martha, I mean, I wanted to explain, to put it into a context. For me, context is everything. You know, my politics would be generally socialist, and so that's kind of a bedrock of the way I would approach anything, that I want to know how did it happen? Try to explain it. And I had that kind of conflict where, you know, I set it up at the start of the film saying, you know, God, I love this place so much. You know, Ireland's such a beautiful place, and the people are so lovely, and we're so talented, and we really punch above our weight in terms of, you know, our compassion. I mean, that's well known. And in terms of, you know, our contribution to the cultural life of the world. But how did this horror happen? Like, you know, and then like everyone thinks they know the story, but they don't. And I mean, to be honest, I was shocked as well by the level of the depth of it and how pervasive it was whenever we did go into the detailed interviews with people. And as Martha says, I took my time with them, because that's the big secret, is about listening to people and let the witnesses tell their story, because they're not getting any younger, and some of them will die. And I think definitely it's well kind of evident, and you would have to heavily suspect that the government is waiting until they die so they don't have to deal with the compensation that's being demanded of them at the minute, even though they're not even fulfilling that requirement, you know, properly, I would say.
Mm. And Martha, what's been the response to the film where it's been screened?
The response has been very positive and moving. You know, at a lot of the screenings in North America, it was really surprising. A lot of survivors of the mother and baby homes showed up to the screenings and talked to us after the screenings, you know, all wanting to tell their stories and identifying with the people in the film. So it has engaged people on a really deep level, I think. It has touched people. Have a neighbour just up the road here who told me that she was born in 1972 and her mother wasn't married, but somehow her mother went into a private nursing home and gave birth to her, but she said it could have flipped the other way just like that, because of her class and all the rest of it. But she was riveted with the film, as was her mother, because they identified with it. So I
Yeah,
think it had a very positive, engaging response.
yeah. I just wanted to make the point that there's hardly a family in Ireland or individual that has not been affected in some way by what happened in the mother and baby homes, you know, in terms of the industrial schools and mother and baby homes and the Magdalen laundry. So many people have been affected. And some people are saying, oh, we've seen too much of this. We haven't seen too much of it. We haven't seen the half of it. We haven't even seen a quarter of it, I would say. So, yeah, and also the TV the film just went out on RTE on television there on Monday night. I've never had a response like it in my life to anything that I've ever been involved in. Extraordinary. I mean, straight away people were sending me emails telling me their story, complete strangers. Facebook was flooded, Twitter, X totally lit up, still going on. It trended at #1 during and after the broadcast in Irish Twitter, up above the reunion of Oasis. And people, you know, people are tagging me into threads of conversations that I wouldn't ordinarily see. And they're all talking about Stolen and about their anger at what the government did. So when people say to me they think they know about it, they don't. Watch this film because you will learn a lot. You're hearing the real people talk about what happened to them.
Is there any major events or revelations that have happened since you've wrapped the film? Like updates on any of the stories in there that, you know, but the audience now have watched the film. Is there any updates that you've got since you finished?
Well, just in terms of people coming forward, both on, you know, all the social media platforms and writing privately to me to tell me their story and proving what Noelle Brown says in the film, that there's thousands of people who are affected by this. One of the women who appears in the film, Terry Harrison, has told me that Terry Harrison, who appears in the film, says that her son didn't want to have anything to do with her at the time that we did that interview, and this was heartbreaking for her. But she's told me that since he has been in touch and they've connected, I don't know to what extent, but she told me he was going to be watching the film that night, so that would have been quite a triggering event for him, you know. So that was I thought that was a good outcome, you know, for her story personally, but God knows where it'll lead. You know, I just hope it brings her some peace and contentment because her child was stolen from her, literally, you know, and taken out of her life. And here we are, God knows how many years later. He's in his 50s now, 50s. And he's finally agreed to have some contact with his mother, his birth mother. So, you know, I haven't managed to catch, some of them have phoned me up and some of them have written, so I haven't managed to catch up with all the personal stories, but the ones that had happy outcomes continue to have happy outcomes. I'm just learning about the new cases now, and people are kind of hoping that I would maybe do more about it, but you can't. You make one film. It took us years, took Martha and I years to make this, and you know, it consumes your life. And
yeah,
I'm not a filmmaker just about the mother and baby homes. I want to do other things. I'm not young anymore, and I will be moving on to other things. But they can use it as a resource, and other people can pick up the threads. Like I know that another filmmaker's approached me saying that her mother was actually in a mother and baby home, and she wants to make a film about that, and she's a very good filmmaker, and I've no doubt that, you know, something interesting will come out of that as well. So it's sparked a whole kind of wave of reactions and stimulated other people as well, you know. And also the poets have all got amazing reactions too, so a lot of them approached me to say they've just given amazing feedback.
Yep. And is there any update in terms of the examination of the ground in Tuam, the exhumation and identification of the infant bodies that are there?
Well, I can update you on that, but maybe Martha would like to, you know.
No, you go ahead, Margo.
Yeah, well, all I know is that it hasn't actually, they've just spent so long prepping for that, and trying to deal with, you know, how they would basically conduct the investigation. And there's no actual investigation at all. I mean, what they're doing is they're going to try and discover DNA connections. But Noel Brown told me just recently that they have now excluded cousins from the DNA searches, which is really bad from survivors' point of view, because a lot of the older people, like the parents, for example, have died, the mothers have died, and of fathers also. So, you know, it's kind of wiping out a whole um, layer of potential leads when you cut out cousins, because we all know when we do Ancestry.com or any of those things that people come up as cousins all the time and generations down the road. So that's a huge disappointment. But also, it hasn't started, will start only properly next year in terms of what they do. They've just been laying all the legal ground and, you know, working out how they will actually do it. I think it'll be extremely difficult, but it would be amazing if anybody was ever connected. The one person I really feel for in all of that is Anna Corrigan, who has the death certificate for one of her brothers who was severely emaciated and suspected to be mentally incapacitated, clearly because he was not being nourished properly. But one other brother does not have a death certificate, so he could be walking around America, she says now, and you would love her to get some kind of reconciliation or some sort of outcome from that whole exercise that's about to happen, you know. As far as she's concerned, it's criminal, you know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Margo, I was going to ask you what was the most satisfying thing for you in working on this project?
Oh Lord. I think always meeting the interviewees, meeting the people, making your choices. It was extremely difficult to edit. Martha can talk about that, but just I don't think you can beat you know, listening to real people's stories and getting them on record and knowing that you're getting them on record and they become part of the historical record. You know, it's so important. I mean, it will remain as a social document. That's what many people have said to me, the fact that I put it into a historical and legal context. And a lot of the critics have said that, you know, that it has had that impact and will continue to have that impact. So yeah, I'm just glad I got those people, because they're not going to live very long. But the edit went on for an extraordinarily long time. Martha will tell you about that.
Yeah, well,
yeah, Martha, I was going to ask you the same question. What was the most satisfying thing for
me,
you for working on it?
For me, always the edit is the most important part of filmmaking, because that's where the film gets made. Obviously, gathering pre-production, gathering all your interviewees, all that is very kind of engaging and all the rest. But my particular interest is in the edit. And we shot a huge amount of material, and we had to deliver a film, you know, 90 to 100 minutes, thereabouts. And I knew, you know, when you submit a budget, you can only put in X amount of weeks for an edit, but you kind of know that it's going to go over that. But this went over and over and over. It must have lasted a year. Did it? The edit, Margo?
Well, there were breaks, but yeah, the first period of the edit, I don't know, I think that was for 10 weeks, and then John Murphy had to go on to something else, so we had to find another editor. That was really tough. and didn't expect that to go on so long, but it went on till the new year. It went on from September right through into the new year. There might have been an odd little break in there too. So I couldn't tell you the exact weeks, but you've always told me it was 3 times over the budgeted amount of time for the edit. Yeah.
It was, but in a sense, as a producer, you couldn't rush this job. It was too important. So it had to, it was birthed in the edit, so you had to let it go. It wasn't like a TV documentary where you go, okay, here's your structure, bang, bang, bang. Not exactly like that, but you couldn't just say, like, come on, guys, you've a 12-week edit, come on, like, let me see the first cut. That wasn't this project. You had to let it happen as it happened, and we had been kind of parsimonious in the production, so we had saved some money so we could afford to put it into the edit, and I'm glad we did.
Yeah, I mean,
Great.
we would not have been paid the proper level of fees for our involvement in it, but it didn't matter. It was a commitment, and we had to get to the end. And I'm very grateful to Martha that I had Martha as a producer, and that she was able to understand that it just needed that time. It wasn't my wish to take so long. It was just that I interviewed too many people. I was greedy and trying to tell the story, but I knew as soon as I went into the edit, I thought, oh shit, how are we going to manage this? It was just too many interviewees. And the pressure that I came under was people saying, well, the easiest way to cut is cut out a few interviewees. And I cut only one, who was a person who had a fairly happy outcome and wouldn't have minded. I mean, we talked to him about it. But yeah, that was a big pressure. And I mean, I left a lot out. Some of these stories are amazing, and a lot of the stuff I left out was, invaluable, but just had to get it down to a level that an audience can only deal with so much. They can only watch so much, and it is a long watch as it is.
Yeah.
And that's what we budgeted for a single documentary. But it probably could have done with a series, but I kind of like it in the form it's in now. So that was the only time I've ever had such an extraordinary experience with a film in terms of its edit time. It was very, very long. Yeah.
Thank you. So we've run out of time. I'm delighted that we can screen Stolen, and I wanted to wish you good luck with the rest of the journey of the film, and thanks a million for taking the time to talk to us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Enjoyed.
Enjoyed. Yeah.